Now we're going to build the rings for the lower section of our chandelier. So to start, let's go back up here and add a transform node. Move it off to the side so we have enough room to make a new branch and connect it to the output of our build layer base little network box there. And we're gonna name this move to bottom. Select your controls parameter and Control-Shift-C your top ring's height, and then paste that in the Y value, and we want to negate it because we want to move it down instead of up. So now what we have is we have our layer base, and it has been shifted down, so it's at the same height as the bottom of our upper rings, but we didn't scale it up. And the reason for that is because we're going to use a similar method to how we did the copy upper rings node. And how we did that was we were explicitly setting the scale per copy. And if this is something other than 1, if this scale is larger, then when we apply our scales, we're not going to get exactly what we want because it's going to be a multiplier on top of whatever this final scale is. So we need to make sure that our scale is starting at 1, and then we control it on top of that. Now, since we're going to be using a similar method to this, we can actually just copy and paste this node and use it as a starting point. So hold down Alt and click and drag to copy and paste that node. I'm going to keep templating that. And I'm going to name this copy lower rings. And now let's update our controls. So select your controls, open the parameter interface, make a new folder, call it lower. And now we're going to duplicate a few of our parameters from upper rings because we're doing something very similar. So select number of top rings, and then if you hold down Control, you can click and add other parameters to your selection. So let's do number of top rings, first radius, and top rings height. And then you can press D to duplicate that selection, drag it into lower. And now let's rename all of these. So instead of number of top rings, let's do number of bottom rings. Instead of first radius, let's call it bottom inner radius. And instead of top rings height, let's do bottom rings height. Go ahead and hit accept on that, and then we're going to go to our copy lower rings top, and we're going to update our expressions here. So on number of copies, change that to num of bottom rings. On our translate Y, change it to bottom rings height. And let's go back to our controls really quickly and make sure that we have some settings here, some non-zero settings for that stuff. And then for uniform scale, we need to do something a little bit different. So let's select that. And I'm going to press Alt-E to open the expression editor so we can see it a little bit larger. So for our upper rings, we fit into the range of the top being the first radius and the bottom here being the last radius. And what we want to do for the lower rings is we want to start at the last radius so that our rings start at the same point, and we want to go down to that new bottom inner radius we created. So let's change this first to last because that's our new starting point. And then let's change last to bottom inner. And if there's only one, we still need this, but instead of being first radius, we don't want it to be this if there's only one. We want it to be this if there's only one. So we need to make sure that if there's only one, it's last radius. Otherwise, fit between last and our new setting. So hit accept on that. It's going to do something weird right off the bat. And the reason for that is we need to update our pivot on this one. So expand pivot transform, and on the Y value of the pivot translate, set it to $CEY. That'll center the pivot vertically in the prim so that it's scaling relative to the prim center. And now we can add more prims and the height doesn't change. We can change that bottom radius and we can change the height, and all of that is working properly. Now that we have our lower rings, setup, we can merge those in with our metal rings and get them generating the geometry for that. So over here below copy upper rings, I'm going to hold down Control to click and drag convert line, make a little bit of space there. That moves convert line and everything below it. I'm going to drop down a merge node and merge the lower rings and the upper rings. Well, there is one issue with this merge. If I look at the lower rings and I look at the upper rings, they have an overlapping prim. The last prim of the upper rings is the same as the first prim from the lower rings. So to fix that, I'm just going to put down a blast node, and over here on the upper rings, I'm going to tell it to delete. I'm going to use the n prims expression and tell it to delete. So this is going to find the number of prims on the input, and since primitives start at 0, we need to subtract 1. And so this is going to return, if I wrap this, sorry, not -11, -1. If we wrap that in backticks, that is going to return the highest primitive number on the input. So let's set that primitives just to make sure. And now there will be no overlap. And if we get on here, we have rings for all of our layers now.